We appreciate all of you being here for the third panel of this two-day hearing, ensuring agency compliance with the Freedom of Information Act. The President has, quote, committed to creating an unprecedented level of openness in government, end quote. Those were his words. But that is not the case when it comes to filling FOIA requests. The backlog of FOIA claims has more than doubled since the President has taken office. In March 2014, the Associated Press reported the Obama administration more often than any other administration had censored government files or outright denied access. Last year, the administration used exemptions to withhold information more than 550,000 times. Agencies must consult with the White House on, quote, all document requests that may involve documents with White House equities, end quote. Just in the last year, the government fully denied access or censored records in at least 250,000 cases, or roughly 39% of all requests. This is the highest number of denials in the history of FOIA. Yesterday, we heard from individuals who waited years to get public access, to get public records they requested. These requests came from the media, national reputable media organizations, as well as individuals. The witnesses yesterday told us the FOIA system is broken and probably broken by design. In preparing for this hearing, the committee received numerous examples of delays, unreasonable redactions, and abusive fees, all of which hindered transparency. For instance, the EPA strategically avoided disclosure under FOIA when discussing the development of the Pebble Mine in Bristol Bay, Alaska. Documents obtained by the committee show that the EPA employees contemplated and advocated for a preemptive veto of the project well before the petition was submitted to the EPA. The IRS contacted one requester, Colin Hanna, on 4 separate occasions to explain it needed more time to respond to his FOIA requests. But after 2 years, they closed his request, asserting Mr. Hanna failed to reasonably describe his requested documents. GSA identified 70,000 records as responsive to a FOIA request on its Green Buildings Initiative, and then used the number of records as a reason to close a request from the Taxpayer Protection Alliance. A requester waited 10 months before the DEA told them that his request for 13,000 documents related to the capture of Mexican drug lord El Chapo would cost $1.4 million. One 26-year-old freelance journalist wrote the committee about his first experience with FOIA, saying, quote, I often describe the handling of my FOIA request as the single most disillusioning experience of my life, end quote. The responses are enlightening and continue to come in. They seem to be numerous, bipartisan, across the board, consistent, and just absolutely frustrating. We also saw unreasonable and inappropriate redactions, including many from the FCC. Unredacted documents produced by the committee show the FCC blacked out the chairman's initials on every email he sent or received. Blacked them out. In doing so, the FCC claimed a personal privacy exemption that isn't permissible for use even with lower-level staff. The FCC also claimed that staff commentary like wow and interesting were deliberative and redacted them under B5 exemption. The time and expense that it takes to go through and do such silly, silly things is so frustrating and ridiculous. It gets very frustrating to hear anybody claim that, oh, well, we spend this exorbitant amount of money when you're going through and blacking out wow and interesting. And the name yesterday, one of my favorites, personal favorites, is blacking out the name of the Department of Defense person who sang the national anthem, as if that's some state secret. In one instance, simply quoting an attached press release qualified for a redaction, while the press release itself was released in full. It's amazing how many instances we have of publicly available information that is on the department's websites, comes back via a FOIA as redacted information. And a press release that it was publicly released is something that you have to hold back from the public? Makes no sense. How can we trust the government's redactions when we have examples of such unnecessary and, in many cases, inappropriate redactions? Despite significant corruption within the agency in recent years, the IRS is still obstructing taxpayers' efforts. Just getting the witness here today required a subpoena. The other 4 agencies we asked to invite their senior FOIA officers, they all agreed, they all showed up. Not the IRS. Nope, not the IRS. We can't have that. There's only one person at the IRS out of 90,000 that can testify, Mr. Koskinen. How wrong he is. Ms. Howard, we appreciate you being here, but I should not have to issue a subpoena to get your presence here. We're talking about openness, transparency. We want to hear from you. You've dealt with this for years. But yet we had to issue a subpoena in order to get it. And when we sent a letter to all 5 of the departments and agencies asking for some basic information, a 1-page request, anywhere between 2 and 8 different examples that we wanted information, Department of Justice, at least they sent us a letter. At least they gave us something. It was terribly incomplete. The IRS, no letter, nothing. We sent a request to you. I sent a subpoena to you. And you give us nothing? These other 4 did. I'm telling you, we will drag the IRS up here every single week if we have to. You are going to respond to the United States Congress. You are going to respond to the American people. You work for the American people. You're not going to just drag us around. Because you know what? If it was the other way around, if the IRS went after an individual, you wouldn't put up with it. There's no way you would put up with this. We expect you to respond to requests from the United States Congress. We have a right to see it. We have a constitutional duty to perform our oversight responsibilities. And for you to not respond to this committee in a timely fashion by giving us an electronic copy, which is what you were supposed to do, which the other 4 figured out, is not appropriate. We don't have that material, and we wanted it before the hearing. And I had to get a subpoena to drag you here, and it's wrong. I've heard personally from multiple FOIA requesters that they wait, and they wait, and they wait. And when they finally get a response, the request is either flatly denied or the pages are blacked out. We saw examples of that yesterday. So why is this necessary? And there's some cases where you do have to redact material. I understand that. I understand that. I appreciate that. But the lack of consistency is just stunning. The time that it takes is just unbelievable. Department of Justice is the FOIA litigator and the provider of agency-wide guidance ought to be the model agency, but we know that it is not. The Department of Justice denied approximately 40% of its FOIA requests in the fiscal year 2014. 3% of FOIA requests were denied on the basis of exemptions. 37% of requests were denied for other reasons. 5% of all requests were denied on the basis of claiming documents were, quote, not reasonably described. DHS is drowning in FOIA requests and needs to ensure the right resources are put towards properly clearing these backlog cases. The Department of Homeland Security receives about 1/3 of all FOIA requests and is responsible for about 2/3 of the federal backlog. So it was particularly disappointing to see the DHS FOIA program in the GAO's 2015 duplication report. Even the GAO has come in and said, this is a terribly mismanaged, ill-executed system, so much so that there's highlights in the GAO's 2015 duplication report. My disappointment grew yesterday when Lizette Garcia from the FOIA Research Center revealed to us that DHS has hired contractors for the primary purposes of closing rather than completing cases. We'd like to explore that. Individuals requesting records from Homeland Security might hear from contractors multiple times inquiring about whether or not they're still interested in their requests. That always cracks me up, right? Citizen, person from the media goes out of their way to put in a FOIA request. So much time goes by that government comes back to them and says, are you still interested? That takes time and resources. And the State Department is as bad, if not worse, than DHS on FOIA compliance. The agency has open cases dating back for decades. Last year, the State Department failed to fully respond to more than 65% of its requests. The Center for Efficiency Government graded 15 of the top FOIA agencies and gave the State Department an F on FOIA processing. The agencies before the committee today need to bring sunshine to their FOIA programs. The agency leadership has failed to make FOIA a priority. And that makes the job of the witnesses before the committee much more difficult, if not impossible. We know you have a tremendous amount of requests coming your direction. There are a lot of good people who work in your departments and agencies, and we thank them for their services. Not everything is bad, but it is our role and responsibility to understand how it really works, what you're up against, what you're dealing with in a very candid way so that we can help make it better and that we can understand it. And there undoubtedly have to be changes. My guess is you want to see some changes. We want to see some changes. So we want to ferret that out. We've heard from the people that are very critical, but you're the people who are right there on the front lines, and you represent hundreds and literally thousands of people who are trying to do their job and deal with the tensions that come from a political persuasions that have been in both the Democrat and Republican side of the aisle. You have career professionals who have been there through lots of different organizations. We want to hear candidly from you what is working, what is not working, but give us candid information so we can help better understand it. That's all we ask today. We thank you again for your presence. And at this time, I'll now recognize the ranking member, Mr. Cummings, for his opening statement.
Thank you very much.